In this tutorial, we'll look at how to open up the drop-down menu on hover. Okay, so I have a simple nav bar here. I've just copied from the example in the documentation and have modified it a little bit. So this is what we have right now. If I click on here, it opens up the drop-down, right? So what we want is when we hover here that it also opens up. So this is how it looks like in the HTML. With the nav bar, you know, there's quite a bit of HTML. So I recommend that you go to the documentation and just copy from there because you're not going to remember all of the classes and so on. So I don't recommend coding this from scratch. So just copy from their examples. So eventually you're going to get something like this. And it's always a little bit tricky here with all these classes and nav items. But basically, once you have the drop-down, which is going to look like this, which you can get from the documentation, right? So if you go to the navbar documentation, you're going to see an example that they show here with drop-down, right? So you can just copy this, this part here to get the drop-down in the first place, and then you get something like this. Okay, so now we wanted to make it work on hover as well. So what we want is that when we hover this particular element with the class of drop-down, that this menu, drop-down menu, also opens up. And right now, the drop-down menu is display none, right? It's not displayed. So we need to make it display block when we hover this. So you need to write some custom CSS, right? So you need to link to your own style sheet here, right? So here I'm linking to this style sheet. And I want to mention that it's important that you have mastered CSS itself when, you know, especially before you start working with Bootstrap, because, you know, with Bootstrap, often you need to write these custom styles. So I have a whole course on CSS. I highly recommend you check it out if you want to take it to an advanced professional level. The link is in the description. So here we can say, if we hover that element with a class of dropdown, then we want to select the element in there with a class of dropdown menu. And we want to say display block. So if we do this and now go back here, you can see it opens up when you hover it. And we can be even more specific because this selector here means select the drop-down menu. Let's see, drop-down menu. No matter how deeply nested it is in this drop-down class. But here it's the direct child, and we actually do specifically want to do it for this one and not any other, you know, maybe more nested drop-down menus. We can be more specific. We can say only the direct child elements, right? With the class of drop-down menu when this is hovered. Do we want to do this for? Because we could have sub menus and so on. So we don't want to open those up when we hover this. All right, now it still works with click as well, by the way. Now, when you do that, we get this weird issue where if you click, it still works, but you get this shifting, thing. We don't want to have that 1 pixel shift. So what you can do is you can also add margin top here and set it to 0. And if you do that, we don't get that weird issue anymore. And let's also check out responsiveness. So if we look at this on mobile, you can see here for the drop down, it still works with the hover. And maybe that's not what you want on mobile, right? So on mobile, we actually do want to be able to only click. So all of this, where we make it possible to hover it, we only want to do this when it's not mobile, right? Only on bigger screens. So we can write a media query for this. We can say only do this when the viewport width is at least something like, I don't know, 576 pixels, right? And we can put that in here. So now on wider screens, right, when the minimum width is at least this, we still have that hover, right, still works. But then on mobile, it should work with the click only, right? So now it still works with the click here, and it doesn't work with hover. Why did I pick 576? Well, actually, that's because I'm expanding this nav bar, right? So Bootstrap has a mobile first philosophy. So you start off from mobile, and then you can pick at what breakpoint, right? So they use these suffixes like SM or LG to decide at what point it expands, right? So I'm expanding at small here. And if you look it up, that corresponds to 576 pixels, right? So that's why I picked that here. Now, if you also want to remove the click here, what you can also do is you can simply remove that data attribute that they use to make the click work. So here for the toggle, the thing you actually click to open it up and close it again, here they use data BS toggle is drop down. So you can remove that and then it's completely removed for click. And if you want to add it again for mobile, well, it's a bit tricky, but then you have to add it again. You have to detect the viewport size and then add it with JavaScript so that it still works on mobile, right? So it's really important that you master both CSS and JavaScript itself. Those are really the underlying fundamentals for any kind of front-end project. So I have courses on that. Make sure you check them out. Links are in the description. By the way, if this was helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. Also, check out my courses on CSS and JavaScript if you want to take those skills to an advanced level, because in there we will build some beautiful real-world projects from scratch so you can see how everything fits together and really master CSS or JavaScript. And I will also release other courses soon like React and Node.js. So if you want to be notified, then make sure you are subscribed to the email newsletter. You can find the link in the description. Thanks for watching and I hope to see you soon.